What's up, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Fantasy Holics podcast. My name is Jordan Jaika, and I'm here with my co-host Ryan Rydawg. What's going on, big guy?
Going on. We're talking about our World Series champs and Nats, baby.
Yeah, I know you're very excited about this. I got to talk about the Mets, so we're talking Nationals today. This is the
Uh-huh.
fifth installment in our MLB mini series. We're talking about each individual team and breaking down the fantasy implications. So we're gonna hop right into it and talk a little bit about the Washington Nationals projected lineup. So kicking it off, I have Victor Robles leading off this season. You and I have talked quite a bit about Robles because you've been bothering me for him in a league for about 2 months now, I think. And the more we delay the season start, the more I think you want him and Corbin off of me. But, I think I'm going to hold on to him. I like Robles a lot this season. He's going 75th right now, which I think is crazy value. That's the reason that I love him. And we've talked a little bit about in other installments drafting guys that are in good situations. There's no doubt the Nationals have a really good top half of their lineup. He's going to steal close to 30 bases, hit right around 20 home runs, and I think at that draft value or at that draft position, that offers a ton of value.
Oh, I agree. Robles is he's got so much potential. He didn't really quite seek it his first year last year, but I mean, he's only making strides and he got better as the year went along last year. So I expect him, like you said, 30 steals, 25 home runs. I think
25, we're up in that.
the biasness a little bit.
Then we have right behind Robles, we have Adam Eaton, who's going to be batting second. He's going pick 209. Really, the only value that I see in Eaton, once again, he's top of the lineup in a good lineup. He scored 90 plus runs last year. Not sure if that's a guy I'm going to throw a dart at. Once again, he has a good situation. I don't know if he has a ton of upside, though. That's my only issue with him.
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. He scored 90 runs because everyone else, the guys that are hitting 1 through 5, are so much better than him. And another thing with Eaton is he's not healthy all the time.
Mm.
He misses quite a lot of games. So if he's a free agent and if I needed outfielding depth, sure. But outfielders are it's a position where there's so many of them that
Yeah,
he just gets forgotten.
yeah, for sure. Then we have right behind him Trey Turner batting third, playing shortstop for him. He made quite the jump this year. He's going in the first round pretty consistently in a lot of the drafts I've been a part of. He's going pick 12 on average right now, so right at the back end of 12 team leagues. Of course, he has the all around talent to steal 40 bases, hit a few dingers, score a bunch of runs. No, but I've talked about it in other installments. My only problem with Trey is that he plays shortstop, I'd say, and that's a very deep position. And I talked about Ahmed Rosario before in another installment, or Dansby Swanson, Corey Seager. There's a lot of lower end guys that you can throw a dart on, and of course, they're not going to be the level of Trey Turner. However, I'd take the difference. We'll say I take not Pete Alonso that high, but we'll take Freddie Freeman early in the, not even that high, but we'll take somebody higher end first baseman, second baseman, and I'd rather have the difference between that and the next highest first or second baseman than the difference between Trey Turner and a lower end shortstop. So that's just my personal draft strategy. You can't go wrong with him, though. There's not a ton of guys that steal that many bases.
No, there's not, especially on inconsistent, basis of stealing. Trey is a guy that's, battled injuries. I mean, he was playing with a fractured finger all last year. Finally got it surgically repaired. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I see Trey for like 20, 25 home runs. I believe he hit 20 last year, and I don't even think he played more than, I want to say, 80 games maybe. He missed quite much
Yeah.
time in the early part of the year. So, and like you said, 40 bases. I mean, you don't see it every day. I
Yeah.
typically go for him or Tatis at shortstop. I have either or in all my leagues. So
I can't wait to talk about Fernando Tatis in a later episode. That'll be a fun one. Who do you like more, Fernando Tatis or Soroka?
Oh man,
Gun to your head, tell me.
Soroka.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. Wow.
But
Okay.
I mean, fantasy wise, of course, you're taking Tatis over Soroka.
Oh yeah.
And
I
20
hope
times
so.
Sunday.
Right behind Turner, we have Juan Soto. His current ADP is sitting at 12.8, so almost 13th, which I find a little interesting. I have him ranked very high, actually. After you go through the top few of Trout, Acuna, Bellinger, I have him right in that, fifth range. I believe I have him in my ranking. So I actually think he's a little undervalued. I mean, obviously he put up huge numbers this year. He's young. You would think he's only going to keep getting better, but I think that he will outperform that 13th overall ADP.
Oh, agreed. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Nats fan.
You have to say that.
I have to say that, but he's the top 5 player in my opinion. I mean, he's 21. He just turned 21 in October, and he's matured so much. And you look at it in the postseason, his approach to the plate, taking guys like Garrett Cole deep. I mean, not to mention, they were cheating. So, but I mean, he was just so pro ready at that age. I could see possibly 30 home runs for him this year.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy to think how young he is, because when you're 21, I mean, you're not even done developing theoretically. No. So, I mean, guys like him and Acuna, I mean, the sky's the limit for them, and I'm excited over the next few years. As a Mets fan, I'm a little disappointed that we have to see them a million times over the next 15 years, but I'll enjoy the ride, though. It'll be a friendly rivalry.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm biased. You got to take Acuna only because of his base stealing abilities. I mean, if you didn't have that, it definitely would be close.
For sure. Then batting fifth right now projected, they have Starlin Castro playing second. And this is crazy to me, and you and I talked about this earlier in a different episode, but Starlin Castro currently is going 243rd overall. And at a second base position that is very shallow, he's once again a guy that I am completely fine if he's my starting second baseman. And when you're taking him, I mean, you can get a starting position caliber guy in the last round of the draft. That is huge value.
Oh, I agree. Insane, especially he has third base eligibility too. I'd be okay with guys like him, McNeil, as my starting second baseman, especially if they're going that high in a well-protected lineup. But my biggest thing is Anthony Rendon is the glorified third hole hitter that we lost. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure. Trey Turner has all the talent in the world, but he doesn't have that consistent contact that Rendon has.
Right.
So it's going to be tough to see what's going to happen, but I would have felt more comfortable if they're going to put Turner at leadoff like he's developed into and move Robles over to that third hole hitter, or even maybe move Castro there. But it's, we're not even going to get a season yet, so we'll see what happens.
There's going to be a season, don't you worry. It's right around the corner.
God sport, no season.
Hashtag God sport.
Hashtag God sport. You've seen it on a few posts.
After Castro right now, they have projected Eric Thames, who will be playing a little bit of first base. I believe Howie Kendrick is also going to be playing a little bit of first base for him. You can probably speak to that better than I can, but both of them are going pretty late, around 235 in the draft. I mean, for first base, I think there's guys with higher upside. Neither one of them are going to hit you a ton of dingers. Not to mention, any guy in a timeshare is not really a guy I'm interested in taking for my team.
I'm not either, and it's going to be actually a three-way timeshare between Thames, Kendrick, and Zimmerman, who, as much as I love Ryan Zimmerman, he should have retired.
I thought he did retire.
He should have rode off.
He might as well.
He should have rode off into the sunset. But he's going to get some playing time. neither one of them are fantasy relevant, though.
So then we have right after them, batting seventh, Kurt Suzuki, the catcher for the team. He's right now going 235 overall. He's a guy, if you're looking for a catcher later in the draft, I actually don't mind him. I was looking over his numbers a little bit. You know, if you need 20 home runs, 60 RBIs, solid production, nothing, I would say his potential's kind of capped. He's never shown big time potential, but he's at least solid if you're looking at just, you know, we've talked a little bit about catcher, and if you take a guy early and Real Muto, or you wait later on, and if you're waiting way, way late to fill other positions, he's a guy I could see possibly filling in, and maybe a tiny bit underrated.
I agree. I mean, he's more of a Yadier Molina. He's no Yadier Molina, but skill set wise, he's got the defensive, skill set of the catching position. He's a decent hitter. He has more power than Yadi, obviously. I've never took him as my catcher personally, but like you said, 20 home runs, 60, 70 RBIs, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, definitely. Then rounding out the lineup, we have Carter Keyboom, who I'll have you talk about a little bit, but defensively, obviously, he was not fantastic, and now he's switching to a new position, which I'm sure will be a fun experiment. Maybe he's using this extra time to really work on his defensive craft, hopefully for your sake. He's shown a ton of offensive ability, though.
I mean, he hit under 200 in the major leagues. He's shown offensive ability in the minor leagues, and once Turner had his finger issue last year, I think he was thrown into the fire too early. Every one of my fellow Nats fans thought he was ready. I knew from the start he wasn't. It was just too big of a stage. It wasn't really. It was last minute. He had 4 errors. 4 errors in 12 games starting at shortstop. So he had a brief moment up in the majors, but he's got to work on it. He's got to work on his ability more.
Yeah, and one of the only reasons, I'm not saying that he's going right now 248th overall, so really undrafted. The only reason I'm willing to at least keep an eye out on him is, number one, he has shown the ability that he can hit the ball in the minors. But if you really look at, I've read a few articles statistically where a lot of hitters don't start to hit their stride until around 800 balls batted into play. So he's really far away from that point still. So I'm not quite ready to write him off yet. Defensively, obviously, he might be one of those guys where it's tough to find him a home. Maybe he's going to have to switch to the AL eventually, or maybe there's going to be a DH in the NL, and maybe that's his home. But I'm not quite ready to write him off yet. I'm willing to give him at least a full season or two to really, and I think their lineup's good enough where maybe you can hide his flaws a little bit, and it gives him an opportunity to develop.
I think it's better off if we start Asdrubal Cabrera off at third. I think if we put him at third base when the season does start right off the bat, it's just going to be even more difficult to watch because I don't think he's ready, especially on the switch.
How old is he right now? Do you know, Keyboom?
I think he's 20, 19 or 20. He's still very young.
So he's very okay.
He can improve, but it was difficult to watch him when he goes up last year. It was hard.
For sure. And he's going to be, if he does end up starting, probably most likely rounding out that lineup. So we'll move over to the rotation. We'll talk Steven Strasburg first. Yes. He's currently being drafted 26th overall. What are your opinions on him before I say anything?
Okay, I'll start off. Last year, it was probably his first 200 innings pitched year.
Mm-hmm.
I think ever. I actually might be wrong on that. He's always shown the ability to be that ace he was always supposed to be, even during his San Diego State days when he first got drafted. Yeah. So, with that said, 26 is really early for a guy who looks like he finally reached his potential,
mm-hmm.
especially at the pitcher position. I would wait, but I wouldn't be shocked if he does exactly what he did this year, what he did last year.
Yeah, and I think that at that ADP, that's exactly right. I think you're reaching for those numbers that he had last year. But for me, I mean, he's in his 30s now. So he actually, I looked quite a bit at this because when I saw he was going that early, I said, holy cow, that seems insane to me. So I looked a little deeper into his numbers, and he's only pitched above 185 innings twice, including last year. And I believe that it was his first time going over 200. And with the postseason run, he actually pitched 245 innings last year. And with a guy with an injury history, that worries me a little bit. That's a ton of innings to pitch. And of course, it's worth it. You got the ring and you don't take anything back. Of course, you go for it all. But man, 245 innings, a guy with an injury history. I would never deny that he has nasty stuff. He's very talented, and he always has been ever since, he was the number one overall pick. And but 27's too high. There's just too many risks. The talent is worth 27, but the risks to me bring it way down. So, and
I agree. It's tough. I mean, pitchers also bloom late. Max Scherzer is another prime example of a late bloomer. I believe he didn't really reach his full potential of staying healthy or even making the majors until he was 28.
Yeah, right on.
And like we said, it's 26 is just way too high. If he was going around 40, I mean, I'd feel more comfortable taking around 40. But early third, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, one of the first few picks in the third. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll let people have them for that. You can have them.
Agreed.
And then we'll go into Max Scherzer next. He right now is going around pick 14 as his ADP, which is immensely high in my opinion. You can't deny that he's one of the most talented pitchers in the league. He's had one of the most dominant stretches over the past 8 years or so. It's once again those injury concerns. He is older now. He had those problems in the postseason. He had to miss a few starts. And, when you start missing postseason starts, that's when my eyebrows get raised a little bit and you say, okay, what's going on here? And I know I've seen a few people have him as a bust. Now, if he's healthy, absolutely, he's going to be dominant. But I think it's going to start to become a question if he's able to stay healthy. And once again, it's one of those things at pick number 14, you really need a surefire, this is going to be a guy I'm building my team around. And I just question if that's going to be Scherzer this season.
I agree. I actually wrote that bust article about Max Scherzer. And you miss a playoff start, there's something wrong because they always say, "Oh, you're injured. It's mid-season. Oh, just get healthy, save it for the playoffs."
Mm-hmm.
Hello, it's the playoffs.
Yeah, here we are.
And you have a back spasm. I mean, I get it; they could be painful, but I mean, you've got to find that second gear and you got to play through it. And if you're not playing through it, it is tough. And Max Scherzer, he also declined a lot in the second half last season. In my article, I believe I put he had a 4.0 ERA in the second half of the year. So it was definitely an eyebrow raiser for sure. Injuries are coming up to him, catching up to him. He's 36 years old, and you just got to put so much factors into it as well.
Yeah, and the age is always interesting to me because I've always wondered how a guy like Scherzer, and maybe we'll see it eventually, but, Justin Verlander is very, what's he, 37, 38 now? And the production that he's been able to put up at his age is absolutely incredible. And, I think Scherzer has that ability, but I think at that age, it's just a matter of staying healthy. But, man, I still am in awe sometimes of what Verlander is doing at his age.
Oh, he's good for the game. Pitchers doing that at such a late age, doing it for such a long time. It's fun. It's fun to watch. At the same time, from a fantasy perspective, he's gonna blow an elbow out any start now. Yeah. I typically don't want to roster any high age pitchers. So the Verlander,
R.A. Dickey.
R.A. Dickey.
Good old R.A. Dickey.
As far as Scherzer or Strasburg goes, I mean, if you had a gun to my head, I'm going to take Strasburg at 9 over Scherzer. And if I
Yeah.
had to choose, I just like Strasburg more.
Yeah. And I think now that I'm looking at it a little bit, of course, I think the Nationals on paper have the most talented team in the division. But if Strasburg and Scherzer were to go down, I think it'd make the division even more interesting, though. I don't know what kind of depth they have in the minor league system pitching wise. But those are two very big pieces. If they're not able to stay healthy, all of a sudden the best rotation in the division is looking a little weaker. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that shakes out.
Agreed. I mean, the odds of two pitchers getting hurt at the same time, it could happen. But, I mean, it's more likely to happen because they have the history.
Right.
At that rate, we have Jackson Rutledge, who we drafted last year, but he's not ready at all. He just got drafted last year, so.
Yeah, for sure. And third in their rotation is Patrick Corbin, who you know you cannot have, first of all, before we hop into it. He's another guy. He's had
Story.
Yeah. I don't want Trevor Story. For the record, for anyone listening, I don't want Trevor Story, and I will not be taking Trevor Story high. Oh gosh. But yeah, Patrick Corbin, he's been a guy, he's had a little bit of an injury history in the past. He really put it together. He was fantastic last year, though. He had a good K rate. He lowered his walks. He had a good picks, or he mixed his pitches really well from the few statistics that I was reading earlier. But overall, he had a very successful season. Another case of, I think people are reaching for his production last year. He's going at pick number 55 this year. But I think compared to Scherzer and Strasburg, I think he offers the best value in the Nats rotation. And as long as he stays healthy, he should be able to provide that value. Obviously, he's going to get wins because they're a good team. Good Ks, good whip. I think it's a fair price for him.
I agree. And what did you say his ADP is going again?
55.
Oh, yeah, I would take that value all day. You're getting a low 3 guy, 200 Ks. Wins are about to get in 15. Quality starts, you're looking at almost 30. That's just a guy that you can take to the bank with consistency.
Sure. And then rounding out their rotation, I have Anibal Sanchez down and Joe Ross at the end here. Not really any fantasy, not too much fantasy relevance. Anibal Sanchez has kind of been consistent over his career. A lower whip, he has pretty good control. Not a ton of upside, but any notes on the back end of their rotation here?
Not much. I mean, for fantasy perspective, you got Sanchez, who's actually older. Doesn't offer much. He's a streamer when they're facing the Marlins. Same with Joe Ross actually has potential, but his problem was his health. And whenever he was healthy, he didn't look like the guy that we thought we drafted. So there's a lot going on with that back end of that rotation. And I'm just waiting for Jackson Rutledge to make his strides to make the come up in a year or so.
For sure. And then in their bullpen, Sean Doolittle right now is listed as the closer. I don't know how long he'll keep that job. Will Harris is injured right now, but he's been pretty dominant. They also have Daniel Hudson projected to get a few save opportunities. What are your thoughts on the back end of their bullpen there?
I think Doolittle is going to remain the closer. I think he's earned that role and secured it. And if you're in a saves league, I would definitely take, your Edwin Diaz's, your Doolittle's accordingly where their ADP is. But if you're in a saves holds league, like we talked about, those saves are just completely irrelevant. You can get Hudson or Harris. Those are going to be your 7, 8, 9 guys. And, why not take those guys later? Even if Doolittle's the closer for the remaining of the year, you can get Harris and Hudson later. And that's a ball team that's going to win 80, 85 to 90 games. Same with the Mets, Lugo, Betances, and Diaz.
Yeah, for sure. I think rounding it out, I think we talked about this before we started too, but we've been ending these segments with the impact prospects. We talked a little bit about Carter Keyboom. Any other thoughts on any of the other prospects? I don't really have any notes on anybody that might make a fantasy impact this upcoming season.
As for fantasy, I don't have an impact much on anyone else. Our bright spot pitcher was the guy we just drafted, and I talked about him earlier, in Jackson Rutledge. He's got some filthy stuff, so we'll see what happens. He's got a long ways to go, of course, after just being drafted. So we'll see what happens with prospects. I don't expect much.
Okay. So overall, how many wins you got for him this year?
I like 90 for the Nats.
90. All right. How many? What was their end total last year?
80. It was late 80s. I should know this.
Right around the same.
Yeah, because we had a rough start. At one point, we were 13 and 17.
Yeah.
Like the first 30 games, and we kind of kicked it back together. Then we had a late season charge and got hot from there. It's anyone's division. You think about how great the Mets have been doing, and if they can stay healthy and they made the right pieces. Same with the Nats and Braves and Phillies. Realistically, if everyone stayed healthy and they reached their true potential, it's a four-way race.
Yeah.
And all four of those teams could easily have 80 wins.
Yeah, no, and I think it's one of the deeper divisions in baseball. Obviously the Marlins. I mean, you never know, but no, the Marlins will be terrible. I do know. You never know, but I do know in this case that the Marlins will be terrible, and I will streak around the neighborhood 100 times over if the Marlins win the division.
Oh, man, the day the Marlins win the division, it's going to start snowing in July.
Oh, gosh. So any other notes on your Nats?
I just hope we can repeat like we did last year.
Yeah, that's a tall task. I think there's a lot of parity in baseball right now, too. I don't really see many teams where I'm like, they're definitely going to win. Even there's questions around the Astros now. The Yankees should be good, but they have a ton of injuries in their rotation now, so their staff doesn't look as strong. The Dodgers on paper look really strong, and then they got Mookie, but I mean, overall, there's not many teams where I'm like, oh man, that's the team that's going to win it all this year. I think it's really anybody's game.
Oh, agreed, and that's why that's why I call it God's sport, aka, in my opinion, which is, I'm in the minority in it, and that's okay. It's the most unpredictable sport to win, because you could have, I guess maybe 30% of the people would have said, oh yeah, the Nats are going to win the division. But that's the thing. We were always projected, to win it last 5 years or something. We were always in those little projections, and we finally did it. And like, oh, well, I wouldn't have seen that coming. As opposed to NBA, you got your Warriors and whatever team LeBron goes to, and you got the Patriots, and then you got your, that's why MLB is so unpredictable.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely nobody had the Nationals winning the World Series. I can tell you that.
No, not a chance. Who knows? Even the Royals can make a comeback. Who knows?
I mean, I still remember when the Mets played the Royals in the World Series. I mean, that team, if you look at that Royals team on paper, I mean, that wasn't a fantastic team, but they just played the game the right way. They played small ball. They had a fantastic bullpen that year. The rotation did what it needed to do to get to that bullpen. I mean, just very good defensively. I really enjoyed, even though, of course, I wanted the Mets to win the World Series, I honestly didn't mind losing to the Royals because I really respected their game and how they put their team together.
But yeah, I mean, if I was a Nats fan, if I'm a Nats fan, or if I was a Mets fan, and you lose to, I would be angry. I would not be a happy camper. I would be so upset. I would
Better than losing to the Yankees.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Agreed.
Any other closing thoughts on your Nats?
That's it.
All right.
I think
that's all we have today for our 5th installment then of our team mini series. Make sure you look at our Fantasy Holics Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Fantasy Holics, and also follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Holics1. So thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you next time.